Just start by placing the hands underneath one another, so stacking the hands, and lift your ribs, pull your ribs away from your hip bones, creating a little bit of space through the rectus abdominis. We're going to lengthen our head. So focusing on the back of the neck, really reach the occipits at the base of the skull away from the shoulder bones, create length. And then allow your elbows to sink a little deeper and softly rest your forehead onto your palms. And I'd like you to stay here for as long as you need to. Until you start to feel like you're starting to soften and settle. Giving yourself time to allow everything to slow down. And starting to work into that SCM region just a little bit. Rise up with your inhale breath. Keep the alignment through the neck, eyes gazing down at the hands. And with your exhale breath, gently turn, look to the side, and drop your ear down back to your hands. Allow that full exhale and inhale, rise. And exhale down. Inhale, rise. And exhale down. Really feel your neck twisting, getting into the side of the neck. Really allow your head to be heavy as you come down. Feel it release fully. And you can take this even slower if you're finding there's tension in your neck. Allowing yourself to rest for each inhale. So exhaling down, and then give yourself a little time here. Take a full inhale breath. Really feel your head get heavy. Feel the neck release. Rising up on your next exhale. And turn. If you need even more time, you can allow an inhale and exhale fully between each movement. So don't get too caught up in which breath you're supposed to do when. So much as just connecting movement with breath and then really allowing yourself to just marinate in the resting portion of the pose. I'll give you a little bit more time to work through that if you need it. And when you're done, come back to center and just focus on your low back. See if you can soften your low back with each inhale breath. Taking as much time as you need. letting everything follow the pace of your breathing. And when you feel ready, let's start by taking our right leg, bending through the knee, and draw that right leg up towards your hip. Instead of thinking of there being an advanced place where the knee is supposed to go, what I'd like you to do is find that place where you're feeling the most sensation within a comfortable, reasonable amount, and then focus on drawing the knee away from your hip so that you're accentuating that stretch through the inner thigh. So your knee might be closer to your shoulders, it might be further away, but keep rolling into it to emphasize an opening through the adductors. If you're finding this is a little intense, you can take a towel, just placing it underneath the hip, right through here. We're going to take our head, turning to the opposite side, and just stay here for a little while. Inviting a gentle softening anywhere where you find tension, and continuing with an easy breath. Take as much time as you need, but if you feel ready to join me, you can begin transitioning. You might find that you need to move a little away from the wall if you find yourself in the position that I'm currently in. We want enough room so that we can fully extend our opposite arm away from the body. For those of you who have similar anatomy to myself, you might need to roll your chest to the side so that you're able to lay fully onto the shoulder so you're not pressing into the chest too much. Since we have our hand positioned here, we're going to use the fingers of our other hand to press into the floor, and we're going to lift up with that back, with our bent knee, and just let that leg roll back behind you. You can let your head drop toward the floor. Once you're here, soften your knee, let it fall towards the mat. So starting to tap into that side line. A little bit of opening through the obliques. Getting a little bit into that tensor fascia lata, into the glutes, more the glute med at this point. Really let that knee soften, letting the leg hang heavy. Can you relax a little bit more? If you're finding this posture is still quite uncomfortable, you can also take a rolled towel or a blanket, placing it underneath your rib cage, just below your shoulder, and then underneath your head. That way we're creating a little pocket for the shoulder to rest in. If you find there's any tension under the knee, you might wish to put a block underneath the knee to give it a little support. Then again, just taking time to slow down, to invite compassion for ourselves, to invite kindness. And we'll ease into the decisiveness aspect a little later in the practice. Maybe your knee is able to drop a little bit more now. Just see if you can invite a little bit more release through that hip region. Beautiful. Okay, let's roll back to center. Starting with our leg, you can slide the knee forward, straightening through the knee. Take a moment to breathe, and we're going to gently roll back to center. Taking your time, you might need to inch back onto your mat a little bit. And we'll start with our opposite leg, just bending through that knee. Sliding the knee away from the hip and inviting an opening through those adductors. You might need to adjust your rib cage and then gently draw down, letting your head rest in the opposite direction. Okay, if you need a little more time, please feel free to stay. Otherwise, we're going to extend that arm out away from us. Again, you might need to just gently turn your chest to the side and gently place your shoulder down. Again, you can use a blanket under the head or the ribs if this feels uncomfortable on your shoulder. And we're going to use our other hand for support while we roll. Let your head drape toward the floor. Let that knee roll down toward the mat. And just continue to invite a little more softness. Allowing a gradual unraveling over time. This really isn't a practice of force. The challenge is in being still and allowing. Just becoming aware of where you're gripping or holding on and seeing if you can allow your leg to drop just a little bit more. And this part of our practice is really tapping into that gallbladder meridian. And this is where we can hold indecision. The Bhagavad Gita calls this being in a place of doubt, where we're stuck between two choices and we get a little frozen perhaps. And sometimes all we need is to make a shift in our physical bodies, and there's a beautiful response that happens mentally and emotionally. Sometimes it can be that simple to get the ball rolling. So just continuing to invite a melting through the hip, getting through that TFL and the glutes. I usually say just to stay in the pose long enough to start to feel that sensation of relief. So if I'm going too quickly for you, just pause the video, stay as long as you like. For those of you who'd like to join me, let's gently roll legs back. Take a moment, stacking the legs, lengthening out through the toes. And we're going to start going back into that liver region. So getting into the quads and rectus abdominis. Let's come up onto our elbows. Take a moment to curl the toes underneath and rock side to side, just observing if there's any tension in your low back. And what we're going to do is just do a few roll downs and roll ups. So hands can come underneath the shoulders and we'll roll up through the spine. I like to let my breath out as I come down and draw in as I rise up. If you feel dizzy for any reason, though, sometimes it's just a little helpful to exhale as you rise. Just listen to your body. Just letting the front body open up. Keeping hands underneath. You can use your knees or just use your exhale breath to rise up out of the pose. We'll come first onto our hands and knees, taking a moment for some simple cat-cow. Peeking down to ensure that your wrists are aligned. There's a nice arch through the palm of the hands, most of the weight resting into the thumb and pointer finger. Shoulders roll back from the ears and just warming into that front body. Let's take a moment, if it's accessible to you, just gently trace your left leg forward and then trace your right leg back. So this may look like I'm doing pigeon pose, but I want to make a clarification here. Something that I always try to remind people is that our toes and our heel, the front of the ankle, the knee, and the hip bone should always be pointing in the same direction. So if I were to come into a pigeon pose, I would actually be dropping down a bit more and I would be beside my foot. Whereas where I am in this posture, my toes are pressing firmly down into the floor. Each toenail is pressed into the mat. The front of my heel is touching the floor. The knee is pointing straight ahead and my hip bone is in line. So getting ourselves fully set up so everything is pointing forward and we're just allowing a nice opening through the front of our extended legs. So the point of this asana is actually to help open through our back leg. And we're just choosing a variation for our front leg that's very supportive and gentle for the knees. If you'd like more sensation, you're actually going to need blocks for this because you won't be able to get where you need to go without them. Your arms, I'm sure, will not be long enough. So we place the blocks And what you want to do is to create length from the knee of your extended leg to the hip bone. So starting to lengthen as though you were drawing up towards the hip bone. And then the same through the pelvis. We're actually going to be lifting up along the front of the pelvis. So what I suggest is to press firmly into the tops of your toes and then lift into your arms, lengthen the front body, create space in the ribs, and then roll back into the posture. If you need more sensation, the next variation that you can play with is just to come onto the top of the thigh. You don't want to be pressing weight into your knee. And you'll want to bring that foot, you might need your hand on the floor for stability. You'll want to bring that foot towards your torso, but we're in the same alignment with our back legs. We're keeping everything pointing forward. And so, of course, our intention in this moment is to focus on opening those quadriceps, getting into the front body. And we'll play with a few other variations for that here. You can also keep the leg lifted, pressing into the blocks and opening. And if you find that you need a little bit more sensation beyond that, you can use a strap. I know I said you didn't need one today. We could play with this at another time. And you can actually use a strap to draw the leg a little deeper as you have the arms up and overhead. For now, we're just going to press into our blocks, standing a little bit taller. And I want you to simply take your bent knee, bring it forward, and we're going to come down to the floor. So staying up on the toes of both feet, inviting some length. Still standing tall into the arms, allow them to wrap back and look forward. And imagine making your knees smile or lifting through the knees as you firm the front of the thighs. Let's come back down, allowing the heel to drop with your front foot. Lift through the toes. Roll your shoulders back. Make sure you're aligned and comfortable. If you would like a little more sensation, you can do the same thing that we did from our other position. This time I'm placing my hand on a block along my instep, and I'm going to bring my leg up, making sure that I'm resting on the front of my thigh, not my knee, and draw it forward. So of course, getting into all those liver regions. I mentioned at the beginning of the video that there's a lot of correlation between the positioning of the liver, the stomach, and the spleen meridians. So inadvertently, we're getting into some of that as well. Keep lifting along the front, so engaging somewhat through the abdominals and opening through the front of the hip. Let your shoulders roll back. And shift your weight towards your back leg. We're going to get into the glutes a little bit more and also the hamstrings. This is a really great prep for Hanuman Asana or monkey pose or splits pose. So we're going to draw forward onto our heel. trying not to hyperextend through the knee. Lift up through the shoulders, bending through the elbows as though you're coming into chaturanga, nice and strong, and bring yourself forward. Let's bend through that knee. We're going to turn ourselves sideways, inviting a little opening through the adductors on both legs. Rock your weight back towards your back leg, coming in to a gate pose. And what I want to focus on is getting into the side body. So grounding through the knee of your bent leg. Imagine creating space from your hip bones into your rib cage. Reach up through your arm. And lengthen. If you need a little more sensation, start to draw to the side. This also, of course, is getting into the adductors. So getting both the liver and the gallbladder at the same time. Once you're here, what I'd like you to focus on is drawing your upper shoulder back, spinning your heart toward the ceiling, and really getting into the side body. And cartwheel those arms. We're going to spin facing towards our knee side. We'll need to carry our blocks along with us. And changing our position, we're just going to take that bent knee, slide it forward. And again, we are focusing on the leg of our back foot here, opening through the front of the thigh. You can play with elevating the knee as well. You'll find that gets into a different area of the body versus having knee on the floor. Bent knee gets more into the quads, whereas straight knee is going to get more into the psoas. Standing up nice and tall, let those shoulders roll back. Make sure we still have nice amount of space between our ribs. We're not jamming anywhere. Thigh is nicely medially rotated, toes curled underneath. And same thing here. If you feel like you would benefit from a little more sensation, roll the leg up, and as long as you're resting on the top of the thigh and not on the knee itself, grab the toes, bring back, and just change the positioning of your hand to something that feels comfortable for you. And you're going to rock your shoulders forward. again, also can shift forward, keeping the toes pointing up. Rock your head back. Stay here longer if you need to. We're going to press into our arms, bring that leg through, coming down. And the same thing again, let's rise onto the toes of both feet. Take a little time to lengthen into the pose. Keep inviting a nice medial rotation through that back leg. And when you're ready, we drop down through the heel. We come onto the front of our thigh and open up. And same thing here. If you'd like a little more sensation, as long as you're not on that kneecap, same thing. You can bring the heel towards your torso, let your heart roll forward. There we go. And let's take our time. Still using the blocks, we're going to shift our weight, coming into Monkey God Prep, sliding your heel forward, finding a place of sensation, lift up and roll down. Let's shift our weight here. Bending again through our front knee. Pivot your back leg. And we want to come into a nice double opener through our adductors. Let's come back to center. If your block is still handy, why don't you place it on the floor? We'll come into Malasana, taking a seat onto the block. If for any reason the block is a hindrance or you feel more comfortable allowing your hips to draw further, you're certainly welcome to do Malasana without the block. If it's a newer posture, however, you might want to use it just for stability at first. Let's rest our weight into our toes. And let's bring the elbows in between the thighs. Use the arms to press the legs wide, creating openness through those adductors. Lift through the heart. Going to be transitioning into a seated posture now so that we can focus on doing some eye work and some neck work, prepping ourselves for going down into Shavasana. If you would like to add a little extra flavor or spice to your practice, you can certainly fire up some of these muscles that we've been playing with by tossing in a nice little arm balance. If that's not something that's available to you today, you just don't feel ready without having a little support, it's really more than all right to just come down onto your mat at this point. What we want to be mindful of, we're just going to play with Bakasana, is we're engaging firmly through the adductors. And I find as a woman, it's a lot easier to rest into an arm balance when I think of the idea of stacking one bone on top of another bone, as opposed to clinging for dear life with my inner thigh muscles and hoping I don't fall. Combining both makes it a really beautiful pose and helps all of those energy lines that we've just played with fire up together. So what we're going to do is bring our legs a little closer together, still have the knees pointing out. Make sure your knees and your toes are pointing in the same direction so that you don't cause any damage to the knees. And we're going to bring our arms forward. And what I'd like you to do, and this is why the block underneath your hips might be helpful, is feel the back of your arm and try to place the back of your arm just below your knees onto the top of your shin bones. So you can feel the sensation of bone pressing in to the back of your arm. Same things that we talked about in the wrists before. And we're going to rock our weight forward so that we're coming up onto our toes. And another way to do this might be even to come from a standing position and place yourself onto your arms. But we're going to rock onto the hands. And you'll need to come up onto your toes. As you do so, you'll need to lift your bum a little bit higher. You will need to look down and slightly ahead so that you know where you're going, and just gently come up and in. So feeling a nice firing through the adductors, you might start to press a little bit up, start to bring your toes and your bum slightly higher. There we go. And why don't we come back down? Give yourself a little time. If you'd like to practice that a little bit more, sometimes doing a more challenging pose like that at least 3 times is beneficial. But when you're ready, come on down to your mat. We're going to draw our legs into a nice, comfortable, seated position. If you have the habit, like I do, of always putting one leg in closer to your body, more so than the other, try to put the other leg in front first. Okay. So getting ourselves comfortably seated here. Connecting with the center. Inviting your belly button to pull away from your spine. Breathing with determination. Focused breathing can be such a game changer for the mind. Breathing this way can restore our courage and our confidence, our clarity, help us get to a place where we feel decisive and clear. Over time, you'll find this breath naturally starts to shift back to an easeful, natural breathing pattern. When that occurs, you can gently allow your chin and your ear to tip to the side, starting to create space through that right side of your neck. If you need more sensation, just take your hand, placing it on the side of your head, and let the weight of your elbow start to draw down. You can gently look up and down. When you feel ready, going to the opposite side. Adding your arm for a little extra sensation if it's needed. Let's come back to center. Take a moment, just shake from side to side. Nice big sigh. Take a moment to fold forward. Create a little length in your spine. Take a few breaths here. And we'll come back up. You can take your hands, just place them over your eyes and press in. You can also circle, not pressing into the eyeball so much as around the eye. And coming back to center. I invite you to sit here for a while, inviting space and silence. Just listening to the sound of your body breathe, gently drawing in and out. For the sounds that you might hear in between each breath. If the wood element is something that resonates with you, you might wish to lean into this practice for a little bit more. Maybe inviting times like this into your day-to-day life, inviting a little more silence, a little more spaciousness. You're welcome to take a little time coming into Shavasana, or if you'd like to stay in seated meditation for a while now, you're welcome to do that as well. Namaste.